High School Musical on its opening. How you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm
was
good.
the main event, 15 years ago.
It certainly was.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you've seen all the subsequent sequels.
Of course, yeah.
Good. And you've seen the what is the new show, High School Musical, the musical?
Only the
show?
first season, and then my free trial ran out.
Yeah. Was that Disney Plus show?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good to know. We're going to be talking only High School Musical here on today's show. We have a special game planned for today's Banner Baseball live chat. We have 7 big league starting pitchers that we think the Orioles could target in a trade. We have 7 of the Orioles' top prospects, and we're going to determine essentially where the line is. We're playing Mike Elias and determining which of the prospects you would not trade for which of these pitchers. So, you can say one guy is quote unquote untouchable, but when you up the ante and you really increase the asking price, pretty much everybody in the Orioles system, you could say, is available in trade with the one exception, Danielle, and that's got to be Jackson Holliday.
Of course. Jackson Holliday is going nowhere.
Yeah. That is the one area that we will not touch because Jackson Holliday's not going to be traded. And you could say he could be traded for, Shohei Ohtani or Mike Trout, but that's not happening either.
I still don't think so.
No, the Orioles would simply not want to take on that money. So we will not be talking about Jackson Holliday. However, we have 7 prospects. Now, one of these is not a prospect anymore, but he's only recently dropped off the prospect list because he has reached a certain level of major league eligibility. Our 7 prospects are Colton Cowser, Heston Kjerstad, Kobe Mayo, Jordan Westberg, he is no longer a prospect, Samuel Basallo, Joey Ortiz, and Connor Norby. All of these guys at this point, with the only exception being Samuel Basallo, have reached AAA Norfolk. And Jordan Westberg finished the season in the big league. So all of these guys are close to major league ready.
And so did Heston Kjerstad.
And so did Heston Kjerstad as well. So they're either in the big leagues, with the exception of Basallo, who had a phenomenal year and ended the year in AA and is the youngest guy on this list. All of these guys have reached either AAA or the big leagues. So we're really talking about guys who, if you trade them, could impact a major league team, especially a rebuilding major league team, on day one.
I think all of them, except for Samuel, would be on a major league roster if it was not the Orioles.
Yeah.
Maybe not the Dodgers, but all of them are major league caliber players right now.
Absolutely, because they all have significant amount of track record as well, and high prospect status. All right, the 7 big league pitchers, Danielle, that we have listed here: Paul Blackburn, Edward Cabrera, Corbin Burns, Mitch Keller, Shane Bieber, Dylan Cease, and Logan Gilbert. Shall we start at the top?
Let's do it.
All right, so we're going to determine which of these prospects, which of the Orioles prospects that we listed you would trade for this player. Let's start with Paul Blackburn, probably the least accomplished pitcher on this list, Danielle. Last year, 4-7 with a 4.43 ERA. Not terrific. He's 30 years old, going to be in 2024. He was an all-star in 2022, but on an Oakland A's team that certainly did not boast many star players. Made 20 starts last year, appeared in 20 games, pitched over 100 innings. He's got 2 years of control. He is a righty. Of the players on this list, Danielle, I think he is probably the least enticing. And it's not just because of the Oakland connection, but he kind of reminds me of Cole Irvin just because of the level of swing it would take. The Cole Irvin swing was not a big one. They traded Dale Hernandez last year for Cole Irvin, for a guy that really did not impact their starting rotation. Now, maybe he will help out of the bullpen in 2024 and beyond. But if the Orioles were to trade for somebody like Paul Blackburn, I can't imagine him, being solidified in the rotation from day one.
And I agree. I don't even think you need to trade a top prospect for him. I think that would be a pretty bad move if they did that, honestly. I think you could send maybe 2 lower down prospects, maybe somebody in the 20 to 30 range, pair him with somebody in the 10 to 20 range. But I would not trade any of these prospects for him.
None of these prospects on this list.
No, I would not.
So obviously, Holliday's off the list. Colton Cowser's off the list in this scenario for Paul Blackburn. For you?
Yes.
Heston Kjerstad, I would tend to agree. Kobe Mayo, absolutely. Jordan Westberg, yep. Samuel Basallo, too high of a ceiling, I think, to trade for him. Joey Ortiz,
That's the only one that's a maybe, just
Right.
because I just don't know how he's gonna get playing time in the Orioles, and he's just taking up space right now. I feel like he would be a starter there. I feel like it'd be a really good move for him, but also, I mean, you never know what's gonna happen with injuries. You know, it's never a bad thing to have depth.
Yeah. And you certainly feel like you could get a bigger return. You know, if Joey
Right.
Ortiz is the top prospect in a trade, maybe you don't get a whole lot better than Paul
Mhm.
Blackburn. But if you were to package Joey Ortiz with some other top prospects, you could
Well,
maybe get a bigger impact
I
player.
feel like I would trade Ortiz if a prospect was coming back.
Okay.
If they were getting more of a return than just Blackburn.
Yeah, and I think the kind of prospect that they would, I don't think they have any room for infield or outfield prospects
Mhm.
right now. But if you're getting a pitching prospect guy,
Right.
yeah,
Especially like a AA starter, something
right,
along those lines. I could see that being a fair deal.
yeah. All right, so Paul Blackburn not going to get you a whole lot. Next up, Edward Cabrera. Now this is an interesting case. I don't know if he is going to be dealt. I think he's probably lower on the list of players that is likely to be dealt,
Mhm.
just because Miami has him under team control until the 2028 season. He's only 26 years old. Not a great ERA last year, 4.24, but over 10 strikeouts per nine in 22 games, 20 starts, 99 innings. He's got phenomenal stuff, under team control for a while. There's a lot of incentive for Miami to keep him.
Mhm.
But that being said, he hasn't been as effective as perhaps they would have liked because he struggles with his command. And if they can't figure that out, maybe you're talking about a bullpen piece. But for the short term, at least now, he is still viewed as a potential starter and a high impact starter if he can get his control down.
Mm.
Danielle, what kind of trade package would you put together for somebody like Edward Cabrera? Would it involve Colton Cowser?
I see. For a guy like him, I mean, you're getting a lot of team control. And I think that's really valuable, even if he's going to be in the bullpen one day. You know, even if you maybe have 2 years of starter and then the rest of the time he's in the bullpen, to me, that's still a good deal. He's still a good arm. He still has a good upside. I would send him maybe 2 of my top 7 prospects in exchange for him. I feel like that
Okay.
would be a fair deal. I still have a couple guys that I would, if it gets you it, I would send him Samuel Basello just because
Really?
I you know, if that gets you a top arm, I would do that. I would maybe pair him with, you know, a lower down prospect, maybe Joey Ortiz or maybe, you know, Calzer or somebody along those lines. But I think that you would need 2 of your top prospects to get him.
Yeah, I think so too, because Miami is going to be looking, I think, especially for a bat. So the
Mhm.
Orioles line up really well there
Yeah.
in terms of trade partners. But Basayo is such an interesting case because he is a prospect on the rise.
Mhm.
He is a top 100 prospect according to MLB Pipeline. And I think when Baseball America comes out with their new top 100, he's going to be in there as well, maybe
Right.
even top 50. But the Orioles have a centerpiece, a catcher, at
Mhm.
least for the foreseeable future in Adley Rutschman. So do you want to relegate this top prospect to backup catcher duty? You know, that's going to be a need for this team after James McCann
Right.
becomes a free agent after the 2024 season. But will he get enough playing time to warrant keeping Samuel Basayo?
And my thing of him is that I feel like, especially early on in his career, until he develops fully as a catcher, I mean, he is just 19, he's going to be doing a lot of DHing.
Right.
And you have a lot of DH candidates on this team right now. I could see him debuting this year, but I don't see how he's going to stick with this team right now. And if he can get you a top arm and you have Adley and Adley's trajectory keeps going up, I don't think you need 2 top catchers.
Right. Yeah. That might become a need maybe if you get closer to Adley's free agency and you
Mhm.
still haven't extended him.
Right.
But in the short term, you know, it seems like maybe too much of one good thing
I could
at
also
one
see
position.
James McCann being easily extendable.
Yeah.
If this team chooses to ever do an extension,
Yeah.
he'd be a guy who'd be pretty affordable.
He was phenomenal for them this past year
Mhm.
as a backup catcher. Certainly, you know, better than production that they've seen behind Adley Rutschman in recent years. I mean,
Mhm.
better an upgrade certainly over Robinson Chirinos. Better than the old Pedro Severino and Francisco Battery, a duo back there. The question I think for McCann is, you know, can he stay healthy?
Right.
Because that was the question coming into this year, and he answered it. He was
Mhm.
healthy for most of the year.
Yeah, just very small injuries that, you know, a week or 2 on the injured list, nothing major.
Yeah. But if those old injuries that kind of ended his time in New York early creep back in,
Mhm.
maybe then you start to consider, all right, let's move on from McCann.
Agree. Yeah.
All right, so we've gone through Paul Blackburn and Edward Cabrera. Next up, one of the top pitchers that is seen as gettable in a trade, and that would be Milwaukee Brewers right-hander Corbin Burns, who's 30 years old, 2021 Cy Young winner, 3-time All-Star. This past season, 3.39 ERA with Milwaukee, 9.3 Ks per nine, 32 starts, almost 200 innings. He's entering the final year of his contract. And I think the only way in reality that the Orioles would surrender major prospects and a huge package for Corbin Burns is if somehow they were able to get him under contract and extended beyond the 2024 season.
Agree. And I feel like if you're just talking, okay, you're getting 1 year of team control for him, I would maybe send one of your top 7 prospects over.
Yeah.
If you could get him for 4, 5 years, anything along those lines. I mean, obviously then you're sacrificing a lot more. For him, I mean, I always go to the infield first because the infield is so crowded.
Yeah.
I just don't think that you need this many infield prospects if you are going to plan on having Jorge Mateo and Ramon Urias on your team next year. So Jordan Westberg right now is setting up to be the backup to Holiday and Gunnar. So
yeah,
I feel like maybe he could be a guy who has major league experience and has shown to be steady and could, slide right into Milwaukee's lineup right away. I feel like he would be a good fit. I could see maybe Cowser or Kirksed, just one of them going over.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it all depends on what the extension would look like.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is interesting to think about Jordan Westbrook's place on this team in 2024 because you have Jackson Holiday, who very well could make the opening day roster as your starting second baseman.
Right. Or shortstop.
Or shortstop.
Never know.
Yeah. Put Gunnar Henderson at third. You have a lot of possibilities. But you do still like the idea of Westberg being able to bounce around between second, short, and third. I mean,
but Joey Ortiz could do that too.
Yeah, exactly.
And so can Mateo and Urias. So
right.
They just have too many guys right now in that pool to choose from.
Yeah. I think Westberg, probably has the steadiest bat in terms of the prospects, the infield prospects right now that we're talking about. But he may not have the same high ceiling that somebody like Kobe Mayo has.
Right.
Or a power hitter like Heston Kjerstad as well.
Agree.
So he is a steady, kind of nice depth piece. But do you try to cash in on that now because you take your big swings with Mayo down the road?
Right. I mean, and you know what you're getting in Jordan Westberg. You're getting a very steady, average major league player.
Yeah.
And that is a great thing to have on your team.
Yeah.
But I think it depends on, what you're looking for right now in your lineup.
Exactly. All right, next up. So we've gone through now Blackburn, Cabrera, and Burns. Next up is Mitch Keller, 28-year-old righty with the Pittsburgh Pirates. He was an all-star in 2023, 13-9 record with a 4.21 ERA, almost 10 Ks per nine and 32 starts, almost 200 innings as well for Mitch Keller. He's under team control through the 2025 season. Somebody who I think Pittsburgh would be reticent to trade just because they're trying to take another step forward. They took probably a small step forward in 2023. If I'm Mike Elias, I'm not trading a top prospect like Colton Cowser or Heston Kjerstad in order to get Mitch Keller, just because I don't think he's that high of a ceiling guy. But once you start to get into the Jordan Westberg, the Joey Ortiz, the Connor Norby territory, then I start to consider it.
So I actually disagree.
Really?
I think Colton Cowser could be a good trade piece for this because there's not really space for Cowser on this team until 2025.
Interesting.
So you're getting the 2 years of team control, and Cowser wouldn't be able to play necessarily every day for 2 years, just with the way they're set up with Cedric's and Austin's contracts, that maybe you do trade him away and just, hope that Heston Kjerstad can develop into that defensive center fielder, or you're able to extend Mullins or Hayes in the meantime.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you have Hayes and Mullins under contract through the 2025 season. Then they both become free agents. Then you're talking about losing your center fielder and your left fielder in the same offseason. You have Anthony Santander, who plays right field, obviously not a premier defensive position, but he's going to be a free agent after this coming season.
Right.
So you're talking about maybe having to replace 3 outfielders in 2 off seasons from now. which is quite a tall task. So that's why I understand why Mike Elias has been so hesitant to trade these guys, because you say, Kauser, Kerstad, where are they going to play in 2024? He's more thinking about where they're going to play in 2025 and 2026.
Right. But that's 2-3 years away.
Yeah,
if
and
you're trying to win now,
Yeah.
don't just hold on to a guy who you need in 2 to 3 years.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, they're both taking up 40-man roster spots.
Mhm.
And unless you have a significant injury to one of those three starters, they're probably not going to get a whole lot of playing time.
No, they're going to sit on a bench or they're going to be in AAA.
Right. But imagine if Cedric Mullins or Austin Hayes goes down for significant time, like Mullins did, in the middle of the season. Sure would be nice to have somebody like Colton Kauser ready to step in 2024.
I mean, it would be, but they did it this year. They found Aaron Hicks.
Yeah.
There are other options too.
True.
I think if you are going for it, you have to take a risk.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. I think it's a fascinating balance between the dealing with the present and the future that Mike Elias has to think about here. All right. Next up on our list of potential trade acquisitions for the Orioles, Shane Bieber. Talk about somebody with a high ceiling, 29 years old, 3.80 ERA last year, just 7.5 Ks per nine in 21 starts and 128 innings. But somebody who has at times looked like one of the best pitchers in all of baseball, entering the final year of team control. Another guy that I'd put in the same category as Corbin Burns. You probably need some kind of extension in place before you surrender premier assets.
Right. Yeah, I don't like that it's the final year of his contract. I don't like the inconsistencies that we've seen in his career a lot.
Yeah.
His ceiling is very high, like you said. I think if you can get 2 to 3 more years out of him and an extension, I would be willing to part with one of these top 7 guys. But as it is right now, kind of similar situation, I would just send over, some of your lower level prospects.
Yeah, we are live as well on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, by the way. So send your comments in. I saw some about trading Santander. He's not on our list in terms of, trade pieces because he's more of a big leaguer, also entering the final year of his contract.
Right.
But that's another possibility. If Mike Elias deems Kerstad or Kauser untouchable this offseason, then maybe you say, let's deal a big leaguer.
Right. And then you can play Kauser or Kirkstad every day.
Right.
But I think just having guys just on your bench or in AAA, it doesn't do good for anybody's development.
Right. And I think it's interesting when you look at Cleveland, too, as a potential trade partner, because it feels like they've been missing big bats in their lineup for so long now.
Right.
And they've tried to make trade after trade, acquiring Josh Bell and bring Carlos Santana back, and they just have not had a centerpiece of that lineup.
Right.
And so I feel like a power hitting outfielder like Heston Kerstad or a power hitting infielder like Kobe Mayo, who could play first base or outfield maybe in the future, would fit perfectly for them. But
I would still want somebody else back too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I still would. Yeah. That would not be enough, I think, if you're trading Shane Bieber.
Right.
But also for the Orioles, I'm not necessarily giving up Kobe Mayo, who has an incredibly high ceiling, for 1 year of Shane Bieber.
And from my understanding, Kobe Mayo is also learning the outfield, and that's going to be a big focus of his spring training too. So we don't know if maybe he could slide into one of these spots for one of these current major leaguers are gone.
Yeah, and I know he hits from the right side, so maybe less power potential at Camden Yards, but boy, does he have incredibly high exit velocity and incredibly strong right-handed swing. So, the ceiling is incredibly high for somebody like Kobe Mayo. All right, 2 more pitchers. I think this guy has been connected to the Baltimore Orioles more than any other player in baseball, and that's Shane Bieber. That's Dylan Cease, Chicago White Sox. We just did Shane Bieber. Dylan Cease, 28 years old, 4.58 ERA last year, but the ERA might have been inflated by high batting average of balls in play. His strikeout numbers were still great, 11 Ks per nine. 33 starts, 177 innings pitched. 2 years ago, he looked like one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. 2 years of team control. It makes so much sense for the Orioles to go out and get Dylan Cease, but there's a reason he hasn't been traded yet, and I think it's the fact that the White Sox are asking for a whole lot.
And yes, I agree. I mean, I think the fact that he has been rumored to the Orioles and connected a lot means that there's usually truth behind that. Let's be real. Those rumors don't
smoke is fire. Yeah.
They don't usually come out of nowhere. Somebody's leaking it. I I like his upside a lot. I like that the Orioles could probably bring that back out of him. They've shown that to do that with a lot of pitchers.
Yeah.
I would be willing to part with most people on this list for him. I would part of Cowser, part of Kirkstead, Ortiz, maybe Retsburg. Only a couple, maybe Norby. Only a couple would be off limits for me.
Yeah.
Just because they just need to get a starter, and like I said, they need to take a risk and go for it with somebody. They obviously like him and think that they can, improve him. It's why they've been connected to him so much. So I would take the risk.
Not to get off on a tangent, but I have a curious thought. You talked about, and I think you're right to bring it up, the fact that the Orioles are able to coax out these great career years and career resurgences from a lot of starting pitchers, a lot of bullpen arms.
Right.
The fact that at the trade deadline in 2023, they traded for Jack Flaherty, and that was the rationale and the thinking, and then it didn't work.
Right.
And you're never going to have a 100% success rate when it comes to developing guys and it comes to using your analytics team to coax out the best years of them. But did that give you any pause or any hesitation about, trading for these guys and hoping that they're going to somehow, the Orioles are going to flip that switch in these guys?
I have thought about that a lot. I say no for two reasons. Number one, I think a mid-season transition is much harder than, having all of your spring training and even all of your winter to work with somebody and change them. I think also, he made his first start like a day after he was being traded, if I remember right. Like
in Toronto, I think.
Yes, they didn't even really have time to, get him under their system and, teach him the way that they do things. And I think when you're in seasons also, you're so focused on your next start that you don't necessarily have the time to go through things. So I would have been interested if they had acquired him, last winter and then seen what had happened. But I just think it was timing.
Yeah. And you see it. I mean, the Orioles have done it a lot with guys that they picked up off waivers claims and traded cash for. Danny Coulombe as an example. But I think it also helps when a guy has been in your system for years. Like you said, Danielle, a lot of these guys that we're talking about with Cowser and Kirkstead and Mayo and Westberg, they've been inundated with the Orioles philosophy and the Orioles training and development staff for years.
Right.
So that helps to be steeped in it as opposed to somebody coming over in July and Chris Holt has, days or weeks to get this guy ready to pitch.
And you look at Cano, his first year in Baltimore, he got traded midway through the season, and his first couple outings were awful. And, he wasn't even expected to be on the 40-man roster, so he was a very easy candidate to get rid of. He has a full winter to Orioles, goes into spring training, and we all know what happened this year. He was an all-star. So
no, that's a great point. And that's what the Orioles would be hoping to do with a lot of these guys that we're talking about as well. So another comment is we are live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, so keep them coming as well. If it's less than 3 prospects going to other teams, would you make Heston untouchable? For me, it's at least 3: Holiday, Heston, Mayo, Basayo as untouchable. I think for a lot of fans, and I understandably so, I think the guys with the highest ceilings they view as the most untouchable because you can dream on Kobe Mayo and Heston Kjerstad, but they may have lower floors than somebody like Jordan Westberg.
Right.
And it's good to remember that Samuel Basayo, as great as he has been, has only 4 games in Double-A. So you could be talking about somebody that, might not be able to make it up to the big leagues until midway through 2025, 2026.
And my thing with Heston Kjerstad still is that, we've seen what he can do with his bat.
Yeah.
His defense is just not there at a major league level. They do not trust him in the field at all. I think he played maybe 1 game there after they'd already clinched the division.
Yeah.
So
and right field only.
Right. So to me, he is just a great DH right now. And the catcher system that they have set up doesn't allow you to have space for him to DH that often.
Yeah. No, exactly right. We've seen more from Ryan O'Hearn really in the outfield, you know, and so I that'll be interesting to see. Cowser having that center field versatility,
right?
That certainly helps his case to be, even though he may not have the same power potential as Heston Kjerstad.
And it doesn't mean that Kjerstad won't get there to the point where he can be trusted in the field daily, but as of right now, he's just not there.
Yeah. All right. One more pitcher we should get to here, Danielle. That's Logan Gilbert, Seattle right-hander, 27 years old. a 3.73 ERA, 9 Ks per 9 in 32 starts, 190 innings pitched. Seattle started the offseason with a glut of starting pitchers, and they've traded away some of those starting pitchers. They just traded Robbie Ray to the San Francisco Giants. Now they got Anthony DeSclafani back, so maybe that balances itself out. But they certainly had a lot of pitchers, more pitchers than hitters, to start the offseason. And that's why I think a lot of people paired them with the Orioles as potential trade partners.
Right.
I just don't know if Logan Gilbert is close enough to free agency or has, struggled enough for the Mariners to part ways with him. I feel like he still brings them so much that they would want to keep him under contract and on their team for the remainder of his contract.
Yeah. And I just feel like the way that the Mariners work, they're not shy with trades.
Yeah.
I feel like
Jerry DiPoto loves his trades.
Right. Especially, the more complicated the trade, the better for
Yeah.
them. I feel like he would have already been traded.
Yeah.
If they wanted to trade him. So that must mean that the price tag is pretty high.
Yeah. In a similar category as Dylan Cease. I feel like they're going to be asking for quite a lot, as they should. I mean, 3 more years under team control, I believe. So whoever is getting him is getting a good, young, controllable pitcher. That's why I think if the Orioles were to trade for him, I would put a lot of guys on the table. I would probably put I would certainly put, going from back to front, I would certainly put Connor Norby on that list. I'd put Joey Ortiz up for a trade. I'd put Samuel Basallo up for a trade just because we don't know. I think, a starting pitcher who has that much control could affect this team in the next 3 years a whole lot more than a backup catcher.
Agree.
And once you start to get into the Kobe Mayo, Heston Kjerstad, Colton Cowser category, I might even trade one of those 3 guys. I don't know who it would be and who you're asking for, but one of those 3 guys I think would be on the table for me.
Just one, though.
Just one.
Yeah. I would trade maybe one from that top 3 pairing you just mentioned, and then, maybe an Ortiz and Norby combined with him.
Right. Yeah. I think when you look at the Orioles farm system as a whole, Connor Norby just makes a lot of sense to be dealt.
Yes.
Just because he is so far down the list in terms of the Orioles prospect rankings, and he may be close to a top 100 prospect and viewed highly by other teams, but he would probably be more valuable to other teams than to the Orioles.
I just, with the amount of infielders they have right now, I just don't see where him and Joey Ortiz are going to play.
Yeah, no,
and when they're going to play.
Yeah, and Ortiz already made his big league debut, so he has to step up over Norby in that facet. And he can also play 3 defensive infield positions.
Right.
And that's why they're getting Connor Norby the ability to play in the corner outfield as well.
Yeah. Because
he's just a second baseman in the infield. And the Orioles don't need just a second baseman.
No, they have too many.
Yeah. So they would, that lack of defensive versatility, that hurts his value for this team right now.
But for another team, he could be perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So he just, to me, it makes a lot of sense for the Orioles to try to capitalize on that. And like you said, Ortiz, it's hard to imagine a situation unless, multiple guys go down with long-term injuries this year. Knock on wood, we hope that doesn't happen. It's hard to imagine a scenario where Norby or Ortiz gets regular playing time.
I don't even know how they would get called up at this point, to be honest. There's just so many.
Yeah. It sitting behind now, they've been, lapped understandably by Jackson Holiday. You already have Jordan Westberg, who has shown to be valuable. Gunnar Henderson, obviously. You still have the veterans in Ramon Arias and Jorge Mateo. Yeah. It's just hard to imagine those 2 guys coming up. But
my only thought is, if in spring training, Mateo, your eyes don't look good, then one of those maybe have room to sneak into bench spot. Yeah. But I think that they kept, Jorge and Ramon for a reason. Yeah. And that they intend for them to be on their roster.
And the fact that they, intend to keep Mateo under contract by offering him, contract and arbitration.
Right.
That tells you a lot as well.
Right.
And we will have complete coverage of the arbitration deadline on Friday. Is that technically what it's called? There's the non-tender deadline, which is back in November.
Yes.
Then this is the arbitration deadline.
Yes, but so this is when numbers have to be exchanged and agreed upon, but it is very common for them to not come to an agreement on this day.
Right. So we will have complete coverage, however, on the BaltimoreBanner.com. You can follow Danielle on Twitter at @D_Allentuck. I am at Paul Mancano. We roll along on this offseason with just about a month and a week left until pitchers and catchers report to Sarasota, Florida. The Birdland Caravan is around the corner. Stuff is happening. Maybe not on the hot stove, but stuff is happening around baseball and around the Baltimore Orioles. Thanks to everybody for tuning in, and you should subscribe to the Baltimore Banner. $1 for 6 months. For Danielle Allentuck, I'm Paul Mancano. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.